All right, welcome back to another episode of Discog Discourse, episode 3. My name is Nathan, and with me I have my boys Kyle and Jeff. Kyle, how are you doing tonight?
Nathan, Jeffrey, I'm doing fantastic. I'm feeling good today. Feeling like I want to talk about Fit for a King. I know you're a spoiler alert, but I'm really feeling it right now.
Is it a spoiler if they've seen the title of the episode? Not really.
Got me there. Checkmate. Jeff, how are you, man?
I've been better. I'm a little under the weather myself, but I'm really excited for today's episode. I love this band, and I cannot wait to start talking about it.
Okay, well that might be a little bit of a spoiler.
Yeah, under the weather, quote unquote.
Boys, I am thrilled because this is the first episode where we're really talking some metalcore. And this is my bread and butter. I'm very excited for this.
Well, what introduced you guys to this genre of music, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh man. For me, I was kind of into the classic middle school music, Linkin Park, Evanescence, and then it just progressively got heavier. I got myself into Slipknot. And I just loved listening to new music that I hadn't heard before. So I would like literally go on YouTube and whatever the recommendations were, I'd click on that and be like, okay, and just go down rabbit trails or rabbit holes rather, and use Pandora, which as I thumbs down songs, for some reason it would get progressively heavier. And I think the first metalcore song I heard was My Confession by For Today. And I was like, I don't hate this. I'm gonna make a radio for them. And that was the real descent into metalcore for me.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Slipknot, I remember Nathan, 8th grade on the way to baseball practice, you pulled up some "Psychosocial" by Slipknot, and it went down the drain from there. So I became just a degenerate for this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was you guys, 2016, 2017, introduced me to Dance Gavin Dance and Wage War. And then ever since then,
I remember that. I remember I was like, dude, you should check this out. I don't know if you'll like it or not. And then we listened to it on the way to San Antonio.
Yep, to Six Flags, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, which is everybody, we're friends from high school, and Nathan and I have known each other since 1st grade. So a lot of music between the three of us. Shared between the three of us. But yeah, Jeff, I do remember when Nathan texted me and he was like, I think we've got Jeff on the hook.
Yeah.
And we would just berate you with whatever had come out. Yeah.
Yep.
And I still do that to y'all.
Oh yeah. No, you do.
And I'm very aware of it. I know. I'm always on the hunt for new music. So if anyone has any suggestions out there, please just put them on our TikTok. Ooh, plug. Speaking of our TikTok, if you want to get in on the discussion, you can find us on TikTok at Discog Discourse or on Twitter at Discog_pod. And I have here on my show notes that I need to shout out my wife for the podcast name because she is actually the one that came up with it. So shout out to her. Shout out to Zoe.
Let's go.
Shout out to my wife too.
Okay. That was unnecessary. All right. What'd she do?
Supported me, and I quit my job for this.
Yeah.
Shout out to your wife. What more could you ask for?
All right, shall we begin, gentlemen?
Please.
I think in this episode we should keep track of how many times I say the word breakdown, because I think it'll probably be a lot. If I had to guess, that'll be one of my main points on every album. Because that's metalcore, baby.
Sounds good.
Yeah. For this episode as well, I want to introduce something I call the blech counter, and I've done my best to count every single blech or just kind of visceral, lurching scream, and I've done my best to compile them all, and they're about 10 in total. And so I want to throw that out there that at the end of each album I'll give the blech counter, and we'll be on our merry way. But it's such a that. It's such a great thing that they've really Fit for a King was the first band I heard do this, so I
Really?
very special for me, very special.
Bro, it's so funny that you bring that up because actually on the Discog Discourse YouTube, which I didn't plug a minute ago because I'd rather people listen on Spotify and Apple Music, but if you want to find it on YouTube, I also upload them there. And I still have the old videos from when it was just my personal account, and I have a video on there called Bleh for a King. And it is every single one of those noises from their albums up through Deathgrip, I think, because that's around the time that I did it.
Oh, let's go.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and let me also clarify. I did bless and yuchs, and I counted that as bless. The goes and the O's are not. Those are not bleh counter.
So it has to be like a guttural sound, a very guttural, deep
I think in my video, I was kind of generous with it. I did bleh, yeah. I think there's a ruh in there. There's some O's. There's some just like long screams that happen. And I think I include a couple, yeah. It's really just anything that's not like a complete thought. Anything that's just kind of a screamed noise.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like just like a primal...
yeah.
So
Which,
also,
it's a staple of the genre. It's one of the highlights for me, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
One last bit of housekeeping here. So the way this show works is every time we do one of these, one of us will choose a band. This episode, it was my selection, and I chose the band Fit for a King. And because I chose them, we're going to base all of our discussion on my ranking, and we'll go from my personal least favorite to favorite. And as we kind of go through that list, it will be revealed where in Jeff and Kyle's list that album ranks, even though it may not be in order from there for them. We just want to have one conversation about an album because it makes it a little bit easier to follow. Instead of talking about one album a bunch of times, we just talk about it once. But it may be out of order for them, but it doesn't matter because it's in my order. All right,
Nathan, let's get started, brother. What is your number 6 ranked album for Fit for a King?
I hate to dog on something that's so recent.
Oh, wow.
But my number 6 Fit for a King album is their 2020 release, The Path. This album, for me, was a huge disappointment. As an avid Fit for a King fan, I remember when Ryan Kirby tweeted about this album, we're putting the metal back in metalcore. And that's kind of when I had my hesitations, because for me, I'm much more fond of the kind of new age metalcore where it's a lot of low-tuned guitars, which that is found here, but it's a lot less riff heavy. I guess the easy way to say this would be I'm not really a fan of the early 2000s kind of really metal leaning metalcore. And that's kind of what this album harkens back to. Really leans into that. Even in the rhythm guitars, there's a couple of songs on here that, like, to me, it sounds like they want to be Metallica. And that just doesn't really do it for me. Once you get elements in a song like Breaking the Mirror, where you're just hitting the toms in the bridge and chanting "Hey" over it, that is like, oh, that is poison in my ears. That just irks me so much.
It's quintessential dad rock.
100%.
Yep.
And I say that having this album ranked number 4 on my list. But yeah, I couldn't agree more, Nathan. It's quintessential dad rock in some points of this album. It lacks the dark, brutal atmosphere that kind of paints the other records. Mm-hmm. And aside from God of Fire and Stockholm, it kind of just feels like you were saying a Metallica record. I thought it sounded like a mixture between Bullet for My Valentine and In Flames. The guitar riffs are straight from Bullet for My Valentine and In Flames. Both of their 2006 or 2007 records. And I could not, the first 5 songs, that is all I hear.
Yeah, and it harkens back to that early 2000 or early 2000s metalcore. That's what this is, a early 2000s metalcore Fit for a King in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this album is my number 6, and this album to me just feels uninspired in a lot of ways.
I agree.
And I think that the choruses are kind of cheesy. There are a lot of cheesy lines on this record that make it hard to listen to at times. And although the production is amazing, I think it's the best production on any of their records so far. Thanks in part to, I think, Drew Folk, who joined them for Dark Skies and also this album, and sort of upped their production, I think, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But other than the production and like a couple songs on here like Stockholm and like Vendetta, like their two heaviest songs on this album, I just don't really like it.
Yeah.
It's very corny. The choruses to me aren't very catchy, and the rhythms and the actual instrumentation, it just feels very uninspired. Like Solid State told them, you have to make this album, and they're like, okay, let's just throw something out there that our heart really isn't into it. Which I think is a shame, because I almost feel like the exact opposite for Dark Skies, which came out in 2 years earlier. So
I don't know. I don't know if that's the case about Solid State. I feel like this is probably the album they wanted to make. It's just not a fit for a king that I really gravitate towards, because I think it's kind of a lesser version of their sound. But Jeff, I'm like 100% on the same page as you. I think this album's kind of forgettable, and there's nothing really interesting that happens, in my opinion. And I think that's the most kind of blatant on the heavier tracks on here, which is shocking for me to say, because I generally love the heavy stuff that they do.
yeah,
But I think everything that they do that's supposed to be like the heavy, brutal song on here is boring. Like rhythmically, the breakdowns are uninteresting. And I think it's because they're really predictable. They don't really play with rhythm all that much.
yeah.
Like,
I disagree.
I'm going to do some guitar imitation right now, but like a lot of the breakdowns to me sound like they land like right on the beat, and there's no real change in rhythm. It's just dun 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 dun, or kind of a dun 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 dun. And I feel like I heard that kind of over and over again on this album.
I don't agree about all the breakdowns on this album. I
Yeah.
think God of Fire is far and away one of their most unique songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would happily listen to a record with those electronic elements in
Yeah.
metalcore. I think the God of Fire is a top 10 song for them. I love that song. I think Stockholm is also an awesome song. But I misspoke earlier. The Path is my number 5 ranked album, not number 4. So just full disclosure there.
Yeah, I appreciate that honesty.
But yeah, I mean, like a song like "Locked in My Head," that is a terrible song. Like,
Yeah,
like that song annoyed me. I listened to it once and I skipped it, with a minute and a half to go, just because I was like, I don't get anything from this. This is not why I listen to Fit for a King. Why do they do this every album? Why do they put that one song in there that is just like, guys, what are we doing?
Well, yeah, this album definitely feels like their attempt to enter the mainstream. To be played in, I don't know, like sports arenas or something, or for high energy or wherever. And I just think it falls flat. I'm not a huge fan of the radio rock, of the dad metal, whatever you want to call it, that this album really encompasses. And I just think it misses.
This is your dad's favorite Fit for a King album.
That's
exactly.
Well, also, like the title track, "The Path," sounds like it's right out of Madden. Like, it sounds like I turn on Madden and The Path comes on. Like, that is just what I hear.
Absolutely.
Why is that the title track? Why is one of the worst songs on this album that's already disappointing the title track?
That song does have a cool guitar solo,
cheesy.
though, to be fair. I enjoy the guitar solo in that song.
That song is actually the one in my notes that I said, it sounds like it wants to be Metallica.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
Jeff, you mentioned the lyricism earlier, and I feel like the big problem with the lyricism on this album is it doesn't feel personal. This doesn't sound like Fit for a King singing about things that they've experienced. It sounds like it's trying to appeal to a very general audience, which isn't really something that is an issue throughout their entire discography. And I think of, oh man, I think this is In the Path. The chorus to that song, if you're broken, if you're bleeding, if you're dying for someone to believe in, don't turn your back. You've got a story to tell. We'll find the path out of hell.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
God.
That is just so cheesy, and not in a good way like 4 Years Strong can be. Throwback to our first episode. That's cheesy in a bad way.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
it just irks me. And another song I want to point out, Kyle, you mentioned that you like God of Fire, and I recognize that like that song does have a unique structure, so it does kind of add something interesting to the album. I think I do struggle with that song because it's, well, not because of this reason, but I noticed that it's structured like an EDM song where the whole song is build up, drop, build up, drop, build up, drop. The thing I take issue with on this song is they don't add anything to the drop after the first time. Like it's the same drop 2 times at least, and then maybe they add something in the third one. But you got to change it up somehow so that it hits harder.
Yeah.
And I think like it's decent the first time, but for me, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, okay, it's decent the first time, but it gets old pretty quickly, for me at least.
That's fair.
But I do agree with your point. Like, I love the electronic elements. I would love to hear more of that. I think for me, the best song on this album is Prophet. And that's a song that I actually enjoy a lot. And I think even compared to some of their other songs, like, I don't know if it'd be the best song on some of their other albums, but it's the best song on this one for sure. And it almost sounds like a B-side from Deathgrip or something. And I think that's kind of funny because the lyric, they say at some point in the song, it's like, release the grip of death. I'm like, is that an intentional nod to how this song sounds like it's off of Deathgrip? I don't know. Yeah. But that song, I enjoy that song a lot. The part with the blast beats after the second pre-chorus.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And that song also feels very personal. I think it has like the most energy, like the most, like you could tell almost that it's coming from the heart in a lot of that song.
That song also registers on the bleh counter for this album.
Let's go.
There are 2 blehs on this album.
It's a shame.
There should be more.
We need more. In my opinion, I also wrote down my opinion, the call out for the album, the breakdown call out, and for this one, I think it's They Will Bury You 6 Feet Deep. Go.
Yeah, that's fire. That's good.
Excellent breakdown.
Yeah.
That about wraps up the path.
Yep.
That's the path. My number 6, my least favorite Fit for a King album. But let's move up the list a little bit.
What do you got at number 5, Nathan? I'm at the edge of my proverbial seat.
But not your actual one?
No, the proverbial one.
Oh, I see. So my number 5 Fit for a King album is a 2013 album, according to Spotify.
Wow.
It's Descendants.
We are descendants of the Almighty. The weak will fall, and the strong will be set free. We are descendants. We are descendants.
Originally recorded and released in 2011, and then remastered and re-released in 2013.
Wow.
And let me say, I don't dislike this album. I enjoy this album. I think there is a better version of this album that came out that year. This album 100% lays the groundwork for what Creation Destruction would later realize. And I don't really know, if I'm being completely honest, what the difference between this album and that album is, but the songs on here just don't stick with me as much as the ones on Creation Destruction.
I agree with that. Nathan, I think that Descendants is, and Jeff, I always bouncing right here because I see that you have it rated higher. I have Descendants rated as my number 6 album. It's my least favorite, partly because, and this is a problem I think Fit for a King has with their first 3 records, is that it feels like the choruses lose all momentum in the way that they're produced and the way that they're written. And in a lot of songs, it kind of just feels like a chorus is put in there. And it loses the momentum of the biggest screamer in metalcore, or one of the biggest screamers in metalcore. And they kind of figured that out later on, how to write that. But I think on this album, it's pretty apparent, and that's why I never really started to gel with it, because it It just always felt like, all right, we're getting going with these verses, with these breakdowns, with these bridges, but these choruses just really take the air out of the song, in my opinion.
I disagree. I think this album's really good in a lot of ways. I do think that it falls maybe kind of generic. I think might be a good way to describe this album, and that's not always a bad thing. Like I said, it was what their first full length, but I still think that the choruses in a lot of the songs are really good, especially the two with the guests, Parallels and The Architect. Those two songs are absolutely amazing. Especially Parallels is one of my favorite Fit for a King songs. I think the chorus of that song is really good. And it is hard for me to find a bad song on this album. You could say that the highs might be not as high as their other albums, but this album to me is very consistent. And although it may be generic and at times maybe hard to differentiate some of the songs amongst the album while you're listening to it, I think it's an enjoyable experience nonetheless the whole way through.
You're telling me it's hard for you to see that Transcend is not a terrible song?
That's
okay, hold on.
That's the one song
on.
I don't have saved. So
all right.
I'm going to jump in here real quick. I don't think that song is bad. I think it's a nice change of pace for the album and add something new. Like, I think really for me, the cool element of that song is like the personal nature of the lyrics and like talking about their faith and kind of bringing that to the forefront and really kind of leaning into that, I think is really cool. And for me, something that like I can relate to. I love the lyric, wait for something more, pray for this new day, wait and pray. You were made for so much more. There's something to live for. I think that's a great lyric for kind of a slower song on a Fit for a King album.
I think that's a great lyric, but following Messenger, a powerhouse like Messenger.
Yeah.
One of the other underlying things that bothers me about this album is the whiplash it gives me. Not only the choruses, I don't feel like live up to what, Ryan Kirby is doing screaming, but I mean, there's a lot of change of paces in the songs. And then, I mean, following, like I said, Messenger with Transcend, it gave me whiplash where I was like, all right, I got to get out of Transcend and get something heavier because
I don't think it's fair to knock a Fit for a King album for having a song that has no screaming in it. Every album has that, bar Deathgrip, I don't think has a song with no screaming, or Dark Skies. But most of them don't have most of them have a song that doesn't have any screaming in it. So I don't think it's fair to knock the album because it has a song like that, while most of the other ones do as well.
One of my main things is that I don't think Fit for a King does it well. I don't think that they write those songs very well through the first four. And so that's kind of a knock on a lot of the albums of, I don't feel like they know really how to write a very interesting song without screaming because their bread and butter is Ryan Kirby.
I definitely agree. They're playing to their strengths when they're playing the heavy music, which is, what makes them such a good metalcore band. I think for a debut album, this is great.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, if I were to hear this as a band's debut, I'd be like, you got to keep an eye on these guys because their next release is going to be crazy. Because from the start here, I mean, this is just, Jeff said it was generic, and I think that's true, but it's such a, good version of generic, just chunky metalcore. It doesn't have super technical or intricate riffs, but man, they're just playing that 0 0 0 0 0 so well. And there is some nice lead work on here, but Fit for a King is just so good at metalcore.
Yeah, I think Fit for a King is at their best when they have catchy choruses and then crazy instrumentation and breakdowns. And I think this album has that.
Yeah.
I think that they have two albums that do it better, but I think that this album absolutely does. If you want Fit for a King, this is Fit for a King. I don't think it's them at their best, but it's their first album, so what do you expect? I mean,
I don't know if this is quintessential Fit for a King.
Oh, I think it is.
I think it is for sure.
This is if you've heard everything else, yeah, check out their debut.
Yeah, I disagree with you.
No, you know what, Nathan? I walk that back. I think that Fit for a King dug out a spot for themselves with what I think their two best albums are. I do think that this is generic metalcore, but I think a lot of Fit for a King is generic metalcore.
Right, but it's good.
Yeah,
generic
definitely.
Metalcore. It's good. They do it well.
I agree. I agree there.
We can all agree that generic isn't always bad. Fit for a King does generic metalcore very well.
Yeah.
The production on this one is also elite. I have a Black counter here at 2. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there before I forgot.
And can I just say, I put this at my number 3, and I think the reason why will become apparent when we talk about future albums. So I just Just keep that in mind.
Interesting. Okay, I do want to point out a couple songs and what I like about them real quick, just on this album, because there is stuff on here I really like. For me, most of this album is like, if I threw it on in the background, I'd be fine. I wouldn't be upset with that. But songs that stand out to me, the title track, Descendants, is amazing. Awesome. That song has great breakdowns. Yep. And I just love the call out, "We are descendants of the Almighty," because that goes so hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Keep Me Alive is a great closer. I really love that lead part that comes in with the Death Will Not Become Me breakdown. Mm-hmm. I think Keep Me Alive is probably my favorite song on that album.
Wow.
And then you get tracks like The Roots Within, Messenger, and Unchanging, and they're all really solid track because Roots has like a sick breakdown at the end where the last 45 seconds are just insane. And I love in Unchanging kind of the effects on the piano and the chimes that they use in the chorus. Like, that just sounds cool. And then there's like that part that kind of drops into a lo-fi guitar with the metronome in the background, and then it goes into a breakdown. Like that's a really fresh idea. And I feel like there are fresh ideas on here, but it does kind of have some things that really kind of stand out as, oh yeah, this is definitely a debut.
No Ancient Waters?
It's all right.
Wow.
It's kind of one of those songs that bleeds into the rest for me.
Oh wow. I think that's the best song in the album for sure.
Last thing I want to say about this album is I think it's a crime we haven't mentioned Matty Mullen's work on The Architect. I think that he carries a lot of really good stuff in that song, and how explosive he is. And I think the best breakdown, or the breakdown call out of this album, is I Will Rebuild off of The Architects. So
that's a great song.
Oh, Matt, this is like prime Matty Mullins as well.
It really is.
This is Matty's still screaming like an animal and he's singing like an angel.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. Do you guys know who Jeremy Gray is?
I don't actually.
He's the lead singer of this Christian rock band called Ivory Line. He stopped making music in 2010, but stuff's actually pretty good, believe it or not. Kyle, you would really like it. It's sort of what really up your alley, I think. So you should definitely check him out after.
I like to hear it.
All right. Does that lead us on to our number 4 Fit for a King album?
Yep.
Lead the way, Mr. Harris.
All right. So I wanna move forward by saying I like all of the albums 5 through 1. Let's just keep that in mind. For me, the number 4 Fit for a King album is their 2018 release, Dark Skies.
Tell me I won't be forgotten.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
I just think that's a horrible take.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I respect the take. A very questionable take, as I have Dark Skies as my number 1 album.
Oh my gosh, why is it always you two are aligned on the albums that are number 1, and then I'm left to fend for myself? Wow, spoil your number 1 early.
Maybe you're wrong.
Maybe because it's maybe it's because we just know music, Nathan.
Maybe no. It's not both of you that are right. It's both of you that are wrong, because I have elite metalcore taste.
Go ahead. Wait,
that's right.
How is this your number 4? What? I'm shocked.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because they have 3 better albums.
Blow us away, Nathan. Blow us away.
All right, so
do your worst.
Fun fact: this album peaked at 69 on the Billboard 200. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah. So the rest of the United States also has a better idea of music than you.
Okay. This isn't even a bad album. Like, I enjoy listening to this. It just doesn't reach the same highs as some of their other ones. I think it's a very logical next step after Deathgrip to introduce kind of more melodic elements. And I think those more melodic elements are where the album is actually at its strongest, because there's more emphasis on writing catchy choruses and making memorable hooks. And they do that very well on this album. I think where this album suffers, kind of similar to Dark Skies, some of the problems that I have with that album, with the kind of bland breakdowns, are all kind of started on this album for me. there's still plenty of heavy parts, but it seems like it's almost always kind of long held open notes rather than the quick kind of chugging or even crazy guitar riffs. And there's still the occasional quick chug, but it seems like a lot of it is long held open notes. I think the songs that are a good balance of kind of the melodic and heavy are the better songs on here. Songs that come to mind for me, Oblivion. I think that song is amazing. And it doesn't even have like a kind of crazy breakdown to cap it off or anything. But like just the way that the melody sits over the blast beats in the verse is so cool, and it feels really genuine lyrically. It sounds like he's crying out to God almost. Like, I look to the sky, I'm crying out your name. I've made my mistakes and I'm the only one to blame. Help me, I need to feel your grace. And I've been waiting in the darkest place. And then later it comes back to, I look into the sky, I'm crying out your name. I've made my mistakes, but you forgave me. You forgave me. Like, that lyricism is fantastic to me. And I really enjoyed that song. And Kyle, I really enjoyed Tower of Pain too. Don't worry. Like, I remember where I was when I heard that song. And I remember immediately showing you and being like, you gotta hear this. That song is amazing.
I agree. I think Oblivion is a perfect song, but I think Tower of Pain is a close second on this album.
Yeah. All right. I feel like I just talked for a really long time, so someone else jump in.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is Fit for a King at their best. Like I said, I think Fit for a King is at their best when they have catchy choruses, good breakdowns, good instrumentation, and good production. And this album is all of that combined into one. This album, I think, has the best uniqueness of each song. There's no doubt that you could think of each and every one of these songs after just a couple listens to this album. Every single one of them is very unique. I think that's you could say that more than any other album that they've released. Just at how each song sounds so different and unique. And then yeah, I mean, this album feels almost like the complete opposite of The Path in a lot of ways. And in the main way, it's the opposite, is that this album feels very genuine from the heart, sort of what, Nathan, you were talking about. And I think Oblivion is maybe their best song. It's definitely in their top 5 songs for sure. I think this album starts great with Engraved. That song is an absolutely fantastic opener. Then throughout the album, you get a mixture of catchy choruses and in absurd breakdowns. Backbreaker ends with a 20-second long scream, which is just absolutely absurd. Absurd.
That's not unique to this album, by the way.
Regardless, though, I do think that your fervent distaste of this album is quite. I think it's very telling.
I don't dislike this album. They just have better albums.
I don't think they do. But regardless,
right.
The Price of Agony, I think it's the second time they go into the chorus, I think is they have that breakdown after that's like halfway through the song, which is absolutely nuts. And then you get sort of the other end of the spectrum, which is When Everything Means Nothing, which is what The Path should have been if they didn't take it one step further. That song is like perfect, teetering on kind of radio rock or softer than my taste, but it stays just enough metalcore that I think it's great. I think that's a really, really good song. And then Shattered Glass and Tower of Pain are just energy in audio form. They're just energy distilled as audio. Those two songs are crazy. And then Debts of the Soul to me just feels like a lead into Oblivion. So that song almost to me kind of feels like an interlude. So I don't even know if I count it that much. The only song on here that I think is not the best is Youth Division. I think it's kind of forgettable. And if the album didn't have that song, I don't think I would care that much. But it's still a good song, don't get me wrong. It's just, I think, the weakest song on the album. But I don't know, like, what...
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, I mean, what don't you have on this album that you could possibly want? The production is great.
The production's a step down from the album that came before it.
I could not agree less.
I completely disagree.
I could not agree less. I listened to these two back to back, and I could not agree less.
Here's my nitpick with the production on this album.
Hold on. Let me get my 2 cents in, and then I'll let you go in. I'm not going to beat a dead horse and repeat everything that Jeff said. I think that the Youth Division key change at the end is something that Fit for a King has never done before or since. I think that the second leg of the chorus on on The Price of Agony is incredible songwriting and incredible evolution of their songwriting. To kind of add that in the back, the Anthem of the Defeated sounds like a Slipknot song, a really well done Slipknot song with a lot of drums, a lot of grit, a lot of vocal layering. And as Jeff mentioned, Tower of Pain or Shattered Glass, Tower of Pain, and Oblivion kind of being 3 of the 4 songs at the end there are arguably 3 of their best songs. And every production element of this album is at the very top, except for maybe one other one. And I think that Deathgrip is one of their worst produced albums. And so that's how I feel. Nathan, tell us your production gripes.
Okay, it's really just one major gripe. Like, I don't think the production's bad on this album. It kind of sounded like I was gonna say the production on here is horrible. It's not. It's good. It sounds good. It's punchy. It hits hard. I think I prefer the guitar tone on Deathgrip. So it's funny that you say that. I think the guitars on here compared to this album sound a lot more gainy and less bass heavy, which I guess is like a major nitpick, but that really stands out to me when I listen to this album.
That's fair. I disagree with songs like Backbreaker and Anthem of the Defeated. I mean, those songs have some serious depth to them in the guitar department, but I respect it. I respect it.
Sure. You don't even have to do that. Let me say some things that I like about this album, because I feel like I've been throttling it because I'm the only one that didn't put it at number 1. I feel like I've been kind of defending my position, which has mostly been from the negative. But I do want to point out the choruses on this album are amazing. The Price of Agony has an awesome guitar solo and an incredibly catchy ending to the song. And like the guitar solo is so cool because that's like a metalcore rarity these days. And you kind of see they lean into that more on The Path, which we don't love. But in this song, it's done so well. When Everything Means Nothing is phenomenal. Youth Division, like you mentioned, that key change in the last chorus, I love that. I am all for that. I think my biggest gripe with the album is when they try to be heavy. It just doesn't really do it for me. Like, it feels less engaging than some of their older, heavier material. And I think for me, it's just like it sounds kind of repetitive, because I think on this album, it kind of suffers from that same lack of complexity that I was talking about on The Path, where everything sounds like it's kind of landing on like the exact note. I think Backbreaker, the chord, like, of course, that's an insanely heavy song, and it absolutely kills live. I've seen Fit for a King live a handful of times, and that song every time just destroys. But there's something about listening to it on the album, especially the chorus, that it doesn't grab me. And I don't know if it's like the simplicity of the rhythmic patterns or the pauses and the longer open notes that replace kind of the chugging that you may hear on older albums, but it just doesn't grab me in a lot of ways. And I think that's like the issue with a lot of the breakdowns for me on this album. And I think Shattered Glass is another good example of that.
Yeah. Well said. Blood counter for this album is 3. And spoiler alert, it is the winner. 3 is the most that I counted off any album. I could be wrong. And I think the call out is I Will Climb the Tower of Pain, because that's one of the all-time great breakdowns, in my opinion.
I completely agree with the breakdown in that song. That song actually has 2 excellent breakdowns in it, because you get that one after the first chorus, and then the one at the end that's a little bit more open. I think that song sounds like it's kind of like maybe the most similar to Deathgrip.
And it has 2 bless. 2 breakdowns, 2 bliss. So
wow, that's a good ratio.
You know, that's what they say.
My personal favorite call out on this album is "Let This Destroy Me." Like, you could put that on a t-shirt and that's fire. Yeah, it's a good album. It's not my number 1.
Not even close.
Yeah. Well, all right, Nathan. Okay. What's your number 3? What's your number 3, big guy?
My number 3 is a little album called Creation Destruction, which came out in the year 2013. they really emphasize the destruction on this album. Because this album is just pure rage.
Jeff, where'd you rank Creation Destruction?
I have it at number 2.
I have it at number 4.
Wow.
Man, we were just all over the place with this listing.
Well, except for our number ones. Jeff and I have number 1, the same number 1.
Shut up.
Ethan, why do you like this album?
This album is the fully realized sound of Descendants, and it's like that perfect standard metalcore sound. If you like metalcore that brings the chugging, then you will like this album. I am a sucker for fast breakdowns that are just like chugging through and it's just nonstop, and that is like the entirety of this album. And I think this album takes the elements that they had on Descendants and does them really well. I think the songwriting in general is much better because they're kind of varying the song structure from song to song. It's not just verse, chorus, breakdown, chorus, because the breakdowns can come at you at any moment on this album, as the songs are so dynamic. The choruses are way stronger on this album. For me, this is the first album by FFAK where songs get stuck in your head. Warpath and Hollow King, the sound of the end, both come to mind. And I think this is where Kirby really starts to shine as a vocalist, because he sounds unreal on this album. And this is where you start to get those kind of 20-second screams just kind of sprinkled in there everywhere. And I think the singing is also better. I think everyone's just performing at a very high level on this album.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this album is really, really good. My only gripe with this album, though, is that I feel like sometimes the instrumentation can muddy the vocals. I don't know if you noticed that, like, with the amount of chugging and stuff, sometimes I feel like they kind of clash with the vocals. But that's the only thing. That's my only gripe with this album. Other than it sometimes not all the songs not really differentiating themselves as well as I think they could. Other than that, though, I mean, these songs are just nuts. Like, Bitter End is just insane from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So is Warpath. And then, I mean, Destruction is so good. That's such a good closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the end of Destruction, when the strings come in and he's just over and over saying "My destruction lives" is a highlight of their discography, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think that this is generic metalcore at its best. I don't think there's much that differentiates it between a lot of other things, a lot of other players in the genre, or at least players in the genre at this time. You know, I think that you find a band like Memphis Mayfire, I think they do their albums around this time. They do metalcore a lot better. And that's just me. That's just my opinion. I think that songs like Skin and Bones, I know I dog on the slower songs. I think this song is just kind of boring. And a great example of FFAK not really doing a great job of, you know, having a slower song in a record that is dominated by energy. I think Identify is a good song because the drums are insane in this one. But I think it's just okay. Same with the Lioness. The vocal layering is awesome, but other than that, doesn't do much for me. And I know that's a hot take. A lot of people love the Lioness. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I did not come away really with any of these songs sticking to my skin. And just kind of with the opinion of this is really good generic metalcore, but you know, Suicide Silence, Memphis Mayfire, Parkway Drive, like people like bands like that, I think do it masterfully around this time. I don't think FFAK is there yet.
Interesting. I think, you know, in my mind, I kind of categorize like Memphis Mayfire and FFAK as different kinds of metalcore. Like Memphis Mayfire is almost kind of like the Rise Records generic kind of hopecore, and this is like a step up in terms of heaviness, just because of the sheer brutality that's present throughout this record. And you mentioned Skin and Bones. I think, you know, again, we kind of had this conversation earlier, but I think that's a really good change of pace too. And honestly, I feel like it's one of the very few metalcore songs that I feel like has some real like emotional weight lyrically. And maybe that's just because, again, personally, it resonates with me and my own spiritual walk. But like, I do really enjoy that song with all the ambient sound effects and everything. I think FFAK does the kind of slower song pretty well, which obviously you don't agree. But I think of all like the metalcore bands that I can think of, like they're more well-rounded than those bands in the fact that they can do like sheer brutality and interesting enough kind of slower change of pace song.
So you said on Descendants that Transcend was Whiplash. Did you feel it on this album as well? Because I felt like Skin and Bones was way more Whiplash between Bitter End and the Resistance than Transcend was.
I do not as much as Transcend, but I mean through the first couple records, I really do think that there is a lot of Whiplash, especially with, like I've mentioned, kind of the choruses not necessarily being mixed to fully, or I guess written or mixed to fully complement Ryan Kirby.
That's fair. That's fair. I just like going from Bitter End to Skin and Bones to me was just like, there's got to be a better place for this on the album somewhere, right? Like, looking at the album as a whole, song structure, how they're placed on the album can be important. And I'm just like, there's got to be a better place because Bitter End is nuts. The Resistance is nuts.
Yes.
And I'm just like, sitting through Skin and Bones between those two songs just doesn't feel right.
No, it doesn't.
It's like the halftime show.
It is like the halftime show.
And if we could have full football all the way through, we would, and no halftime show. It's like, I will say it's funny because the first time we hear Ryan Kirby in Fit for a King on Spotify, he does a bleh.
King behavior.
Warpath. There are two of them on this album, and the first time we hear Ryan Kirby on Fit for a King, he gives us a guttural, throat clearing bleh.
That's amazing. I love that. There are a couple more things I want to talk about on this album, just really quick. And of course, one of them is the breakdowns on this album. The intricate rhythms are insane. And one thing I do notice about this album is they love doing a little guitar bend into a breakdown where it kind of goes wow, dun 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 dun. It's like that is everywhere, just sprinkled throughout this album, but it works every time. And I think, we briefly mentioned the Resistance. That is absolutely a classic. It has one of the all-time breakdown call-outs with "Your existence disgusts me."
Oh yeah.
That is not only a great breakdown, but a great pre-breakdown call-out. Like, that is hilarious and amazing. And I think, honestly, for me, that's on par with something like "Disrespect Your Surroundings" from A Day to Remember.
Yeah, no, that is my favorite call-out from this album.
I also really like in the Lioness, "I will give you the gift of death," as like the guitars kind of drop out into this really gainy, bassy sound while there's this dive bomb sound effect in the background before the breakdown. I mean, that's just unreal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On Warpath, "I Am the Enemy" is also followed by that breakdown is vile. It is vile.
This album is just a masterclass in chugging breakdowns.
Good stuff.
It's amazing. And on the other end of that, I really like kind of their lyricism. This is kind of a thing about Fit for a King in general, but I feel like you can see it on this album where they're able to include their beliefs without being like too heavy-handed. They're really just kind of singing and screaming about real issues that people deal with through the lens of their beliefs, which I think is the ideal way to be kind of a Christian metalcore band and do those spin kicks for Jesus and everything. And that sounds kind of simple, but like they do it really well, and not every Christian metalcore band does that well. And I think like a song like "Eyes to See," where they're very clearly talking about like a result of their faith, is they like kind of wrestle with their beliefs and talk about questioning everything. I feel like that's kind of an important topic as a believer that doesn't get talked about a lot, because I think it's something that everyone can relate to, but people kind of avoid the conversation because it's like, oh, do I believe? Do I not believe? But I think like it's a really important thing to talk about. And I find that song really compelling for that very reason.
Yeah. And I think they don't do that on The Path, which
I agree.
Is, that album is just so heavy handed with it. There's no subtlety at all in the lyrics for most of it.
Yeah. And
well, the path just doesn't sound personal. Like there's a song where you're talking about wrestling with the beliefs that you have that really form your worldview. You go from something like that on this album to something like whatever, if you're sad, if you're broken, we'll get out of hell. Like there's such a stark contrast there. And I think it's just like the main point is the lyrics don't feel personal on that album, where on here, they really do.
That's a really good point.
Good word.
My little spiel on their faith in their lyrics. I appreciate that. I like that. Does that bring us to our number 2?
To your number 2, and possibly my number 2, Nathan.
And possibly Jeff's number 5. Let's give a quick update on the standings right now, because this is actually like crazy how different we are. So for me, I put The Path at number 6. That ranked at 5 for Kyle and 6 for Jeff. Descendants came in at my number 5. That was Kyle's least favorite at number 6. Jeff's top 3, number 3. And then this is the hottest take of the night, apparently. My number 4 is their album Dark Skies, which ranked at number 1 for both Kyle and Jeff. And then at number 3, we had Creation Destruction, which was 4 for Kyle and 2 for Jeff. These lists are insanely different.
Give it to me. I can't wait, Nathan. Number 2, baby.
Number 2, 2014's Slave to Nothing.
Me too. Number 2, baby. Slave to Nothing.
We have something in common. Let's go, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm freaking talking
number
about.
4.
That's what I like. I don't feel so alone anymore.
Yeah, Jeff shamefully says
It's my number 4. Yep.
Jeff, I'm going to kick this off to you right away.
Yeah.
What don't you like about this album?
Yeah, Jeff, give it to me.
This used to be my favorite Fit for a King album.
Huh?
Wow, quite a fall from grace.
I know,
truly.
I know. Upon self introspection, I've changed my mind a little bit, but there's a lot of good stuff to say about this album. We'll keep going back to this theme of how personal this album, but this almost feels like to me their most personal album in a lot of ways, with the lyrics and the emotion that you feel from a lot of these songs, both from the clean and the unclean vocals. You could definitely tell that they put their hearts into this. And I also think that this album has a lot of their best songs. My favorite Fit for a King song is A Greater Sense of Self. That is my favorite Fit for a King song on this album. And Breakaway is a great song. Like, basically everything from Kill the Pain to A Greater Sense of Self is amazing. But then that's sort of where it starts to die down a little bit for me. I think this album ends very weakly. I don't think it ends strong at all. I'm not a huge fan of like the last 4 songs. I don't think they're very memorable, and I'm just not a huge fan. I think the choruses are not very catchy at all. You know, just compared to the first half of the album, I think it's missing a lot of what made those songs great. That's just, something I noticed. As well as on this album, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I felt like sometimes the screaming and the cleans like had different volumes. Sometimes the cleans were just straight up louder than the screaming, and like when it was switched between them, it would be kind of jarring. I don't know if you guys noticed that. It's sort of like...
I never noticed that.
Yeah, and I love this album, but that is my biggest gripe. So it's once again the whiplash effect that the first 3 albums carry.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty bad on this album just because of, I mean, at least from what I felt like was kind of the mixing was a little off. But, another problem that I have with this album is I just wish it was heavier. I feel like it's not super heavy in a lot of places. Now, there are heavy songs. Slave to Nothing is nuts. That's a really, really good song. And so is Imposter as well. Imposter is also pretty heavy. But again, Imposter, I don't like the chorus on that song like at all.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't really like the chorus on that song that much. So I don't know. I guess I just realized that I think their other stuff is just better. And maybe I'm more I'm more drawn to their heavier stuff. I want the craziness, and I just don't think that this album brings that as well as their other albums do. So,
all right, hear me out. So we used the Billboard Top 200 as a metric earlier. This peaked at 49. So who do the people agree with more?
Whoops.
Yep, it's me.
So, well, okay, and me, sir.
And
All right.
Kyle. Kyle's right on this one.
Fair enough.
Man of the people.
The fact that this album came out a year after Creation Destruction is crazy to me, because this is a totally different Fit for a King. This album has a very unique sound for them, I think. Like, I kind of think of their discography, and I think Descendants and Creation Destruction are similar, and then Deathgrip, Dark Skies, and The Path all kind of have the same backbone. Maybe The Path is out there on its own too, but they don't have another album that sounds like Slave to Nothing.
True.
And Jeff, you mentioned that, it doesn't really bring the heavy. I disagree entirely. I think this album is their heaviest, but kind of in a different way. I think instead of focusing on breakdowns and chugging, it's a lot more like riff heavy than their other albums are. And I think they use that to the advantage of this album. It's very riff heavy. It's very dark in a lot of places. Like, the ambience that they have on this album is so moody, and it sounds like there's so much weight to it, and it sounds truly pissed off. This is just a much darker Fit for a King than we've seen on other albums. Like, if Creation Destruction is pure rage, this is like almost introspective rage. And I think, like, the name of the album, Slave to Nothing, there's a very clear theme on here to me, lyrically throughout the album, about struggling to find freedom from the things that you're a slave to. You get a song like Kill the Pain, where it's very clearly like about struggles with substance abuse, and the whole song really kind of sounds like a confession to God about it, where it's like, kill the pain and guide me back to you. And then you get a song like Slave to Nothing, and like the ambient guitar when the music first comes in full is like borderline haunting. Like, there's just such an ambience to this album that feels so heavy, but it's not just like the pure rage heavy. Although Slave to Nothing kind of has that with like the blast beats and everything. And then also, I had never realized this until I was looking at the lyrics for this. This song has Maddie Montgomery from For Today, and I never noticed it. But now that I hear it, I can't unnotice it. And they both sound incredible on that song.
Yeah, I agree, Nathan. I wrote down that this is my type of metalcore, and that it's so angry and so dark. And there are a lot of riffs, a lot of guitar riffs on this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to the point where it's almost too much guitar riffs, but I don't think so.
I also don't think so.
I think it's beautiful. I think Kill the Pain is such a great starter. I think Slave to Nothing is a top 5 song for Fit for a King. And Jeff, I disagree. I think that Forever Unbroken and Imposter are 2 really, really good songs.
Yep.
I think the Final Thoughts of a Dying Man is a pretty weak closer, but overall, my only gripe with this album is my gripe with the first 2 albums, which is, I think the choruses really kill a lot of the momentum. I think 4 of them specifically kill a lot of the momentum, and then there are 4 to 5 that don't kill the momentum. So it looks like they're learning and they're getting there. And so I couldn't agree more. There is a lyric off of Imposter where the first 2 times I listened to it, I thought he was saying a lawyer in heaven makes an angel in hell. I was a little bit taken aback because my dad's a lawyer. And so I was like, well, Fit for a King, what are we saying here? I really did think that that's what they were saying. And then I looked at the lyrics, and it's a liar in heaven, which makes so much more sense. But I was like, what does that mean? That my father in heaven is an angel in hell? Like, that, is that a good thing?
That's hilarious.
But yeah, no, literally the first 2 times I heard that song, I was like, I don't know, guys. What the hell are you guys talking about? But yeah, Black Counter is 2 on this one. Once again. So Dark Skies had 3. Just be clear here. And they are leading the pack. And I think that I'm a slave to nothing call out is unbelievable.
That breakdown is so good.
By far the best on the song. Well, and then later in the song he says, "I hope you rot," followed by a breakdown. Goodness gracious. They packed a series. I mean, why? You guys are so angry. What's going on?
Dude, this album is very angry. And I'm curious to know what choruses don't work for you on here, because I think the choruses on this album are amazing.
I don't like Imposter. I don't really like Hooked. That even like, and I think Forever Unbroken is okay.
Hooked is one of the ones. Breakaway is another one that I think kills a lot of the.
Disagree on that, dude.
Oh, I love the chorus in Breakaway.
Breakaway is awesome.
I also really like the chorus in Young and Undeserving.
Oh yeah, that song's great.
That song is like peak. Look at this songwriting. I also maybe I like the choruses because I love Tuck's voice on here so much. Like, I really feel like they have a unique, clean vocalist on here, because normally in metalcore you get kind of the Matty Mullins high pitched, poppy kind of choruses, but I think Tuck kind of has more grit in his voice, and it's almost shouted, not quiet, but I think like he has a really interesting tone with his vocals, and it sounds amazing.
I also think Young and Undeserving kills momentum, the chorus of that one.
Come on, dude.
Dude, I'm sorry. These are this is what I wrote down. I don't have these songs playing in my head, but I trust Kyle on 3 days ago.
You trust 3 days ago Kyle's notes?
3 days ago Kyle wrote this, and he said, "You know what? This is what I think. And if you're going to hurt my feelings from it, then you can do that right now, Jeffrey."
All right. Two things that I agree with y'all on. The closing track, pretty weak. Jeff, I agree. The front half of this album is better than the second half, but for me, it's only like slightly so. But that's just because like the front half of this album is insane.
Yeah, I love the front half of this album so much.
Every breakdown in the front half sounds like a bomb is going off. Like, it just sounds like a bomb is going off in the middle of the song, which is my type of breakdown. It's my type of breakdown.
I'm right there with you. Like, Breakaway has two of the coolest breakdowns that Fit for a King has ever written, I think. Like, you get that serpent burn in hell breakdown that has like that super funky rhythm, and then they have the audacity to do the take your life back breakdown at the end. That's just like the chugging. Oh, that is it right there. That is the good stuff.
Yeah, that song's awesome. And I disagree. I think the chorus is really, really catchy on that song.
I'm right there with you. I love the choruses on that song.
Kyle.
Gentlemen. Hey, Jeffrey. Hey, you had this at number 4. Man of the People, Billboard Top 50, had it at number 2. All right. So, and Nathan, I swear to God, if you say that Deathgrip's your number 1 is like a top 20 on the Billboard, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm just gonna say it.
It's not.
Okay, cool.
It's actually the lowest peaked one that I have so far. But my number 1 Fit for a King album is Deathgrip. Peaked at 71 on the Billboard 200. So I'm not so much a man of the people anymore. I can't use that argument, I guess, if I'm not going to use it everywhere. I love every song on this album. I think front to back, this album is just pretty unreal. And it might, I might be a little bit biased because this is the album that got me into Fit for a King. I got into them when they dropped Pissed Off as a single. Like, I had heard the name before, never really gotten into them. Nothing ever stood out. I checked them out a couple times, but I wasn't gripped by it. Death gripped by it, if you will. I heard that song and I was like, holy smokes. Yeah. That breakdown at the end with another like 20-25 second scream at it.
Well, it's like a growl. Like that at the end, it's a growl. I was listening to that on the bus on the way to work the other day, and I felt like I needed to I didn't feel like I should be there. Like, I was like, what Ryan Kirby is doing on the mic right now is not meant to be listened to on public transportation at 7:30 a.m.
No, that song is nuts.
Real quick, where did this rank on y'all's list? Because my number 1.
It's my number 5.
It's my number 3.
Jeffrey, what are you doing, bro?
Listen, man, this is another case of the first half of the album is better than the second half. And I just think that the albums above it are more consistent. And it's the same thing with Slave to Nothing. I just think Descendants, Creation, Destruction, and Dark Skies are more consistent, which I think is a big deal since we're evaluating these projects as a whole. Like you have to look at them as a whole unit. With Deathgrip specifically, I just don't really like the production on this album, to be honest. I don't think that the guitars feel very punchy to me like they wanted them to, and it kind of kills the whole thing. Like the production feels so flat throughout like the whole project from, and I just like I would rather go listen to something else where the guitars have more punch.
I can't believe you just said that.
That's how I feel. I'm speaking from the heart right now. That's how I feel.
Your feelings are wrong on this one.
No, they're not.
Because this album's so punchy. You listen to the last minute of Pissed Off and tell me that's not punchy?
Pissed Off is one of the songs where I feel like the production kind of kills it. It just feels flat. The whole thing just feels flat. Compared to their other...
Whoops.
I know this is an audio medium, but I just facepalmed.
I'm sorry, compared to their other projects, this has like the most flat production. I almost want them to just like remaster it and just make the guitars like punchy. And then it'll be...
The guitars are punchy!
I don't think... It doesn't sound like that to me. It really doesn't. Compared to their other projects, at least, the guitars just aren't as punchy.
Yeah, I feel like the production on this album, though I don't necessarily side with Jeff in saying that it should be remastered because it should not, in my opinion. I do think that a lot of the instruments just kind of sound blended and nothing's as separate. And there are some songs that it's just not, it doesn't flow very well. I don't think it sounds very good. And a lot of the instruments are really close together sounding, if that makes any sense. I think Pissed Off is a great song, but I think there are songs like We Are All Lost, and I think that song is hot garbage. I think the chorus is boring, and I think it's an extremely generic song. And yeah, I think that there are just some really great songs like Pissed Off, like Shadows and Echo, and then there are some songs like We Are All Lost. It doesn't do it for me, man.
Yeah, We Are All Lost, Unclaimed, Unloved, and the ending track, Deathgrip. Those aren't the best songs on the album.
Okay. You just lost all credibility by saying Deathgrip is not a good song.
It's a lower tier song on the album.
Yeah, I didn't say it was a bad song. I just said...
Oh my God, who am I talking to?
Hey, you are the same guy, Nathan. You talk about facepalming. When you put Dark Skies at number 4, I facepalmed and then threw up. So...
okay.
Wow, this is crazy. I really didn't hear so much to pull out.
I love this album.
Man. I think Dead Memory is awesome. I think Cold Room is a good song. I think Disease is pretty good. But yeah, man, like Unclaimed, Unloved, We Are All Lost, More Than Nameless is fine.
Oh, dude, the album starts so strong. Like it starts so strong.
Does. No, it does. I mean, my God, dude, Pissed Off, Dead Memory, Cold Room.
Insane 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, Disease, you can throw that in.
I like
there
the song
too.
as well.
I will. All right. I think I need to get on my soapbox for why I love this album.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
I think while they toned back some of the riff-heavy songs that you may have heard on Slave to Nothing, they pick a very specific metalcore kind of sound for this album, and it's kind of generic 2015, 2016 metalcore. But what they're doing, they do so well on here. I think everyone is at their peak performance on this album for the sound that they chose. Ryan Kirby sounds like an animal on this album. And, I point back to the scream at the end of Pissed Off. It's insane. And then something else that really stands out to me on this album is his highs that he breaks out every now and then are ridiculous. I also think Tuck is writing the best choruses he's ever written on this album.
Oh my God, I think that's just wrong.
Dead Memory is the best chorus in Fit for a King's discography.
No.
It's up there.
No,
it's up there.
Not.
It is up there.
It's not better than Oblivion. It is not better than Oblivion,
also true,
man.
But it's definitely up there.
My mom likes that song. And if it comes on shuffle, it will be stuck in her head the rest of the day, and that's how you know it's a good chorus. And yes, my mom dabbles in metalcore.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking. You said the Disease chorus that we thought we were invincible?
No, Dead Memory.
Sorry. Oh yeah. No, you're right. That chorus is fire.
It's amazing. Would you even notice?
That's a top 10 song for me easily.
100%.
But it's not a better chorus than Oblivion.
Yes, it is. Their drummer is tearing it up on this album, pointing to Dead Memories again. Those drum fills, the one at the beginning and then throughout the song, are just insane. And then you get a song like Shadows and Echoes where the drum fills are just everywhere. And I think it's in that song where there's a part in the breakdown where it sounds like he's doing a double kick pattern and it like slows down. That's awesome. And that's so cool. And I feel like I haven't heard that anywhere else. Bobby is going absolutely nuts on the guitar. Maybe not as riff heavy as on Slave to Nothing, but what he's doing is just downright disgusting. He's putting on a clinic on Cold Room with that.
Oh, I love that part.
That riff is crazy, and it's awesome. And I think the production on this album is really good. I was kind of already talking about this with Jeff when we were having our little debate, but like this album sounds so punchy, and I think a lot of the credit goes to Nick Sampson because he's done a lot of great metalcore work. We're looking at Of Mice and Men, The Flood. That album's crazy. Drift by Era. Hello. Hikari by Ocean's 8 Alaska. Like, that is an incredible resume.
That is.
Do you think the production is better on this album than their two newest ones?
Personally, I enjoy it more than their two newest ones. Like I said earlier, I think the guitars sound more gainy and as a result a little thinner on Dark Skies, and then maybe the production's better on The Path, but I just don't like the songs on there enough to listen to it, so I couldn't tell you.
That's fair.
I think The Path is produced better, but the songs are far better on Deathgrip.
Yeah, that's possible. I could see that happening. I'm very interested to see what their new stuff is going to sound like at the time of recording this. Their single drops tomorrow, which is kind of poor timing, but I'm intrigued to see what that'll sound like.
I don't know. From the snippet that I saw, it almost sounds like The Path, kind of.
Yeah, I kind of agree from that snippet. I heard, this is kind of getting off into a tangent, but I've heard one of the new songs live. I don't know if it's the one that they're dropping tomorrow, and it sounds almost like a return, in my opinion, to something like Deathgrip, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right.
I'm excited to hear their new stuff for sure. But I think one of the things I really like about the production on here is like there's so many cool effects that they put on the guitars in each of the different breakdowns for different songs. And like there's a lot of cool atmospheric choices that kind of add a unique flavor. I think of like the swirling reverse snare that you hear in the wide open portion of the breakdown at the end of Pissed Off, and like the choir and strings in Dead Memory, which is chef's kiss. And then you get those really diminished chords and Shadows and Echoes. And then like Deathgrip, I think the breakdown in that song is so cool. Like that was really the first time they did that kind of wide open, super spacious, very atmospheric breakdown. And like that is just so memorable to me. And Jeff, I don't know how you can say this album isn't punchy when there's that You Will Know My Misery breakdown in Dead Memory.
That's my top call out of the album, by the way.
Great call out. And that breakdown hits hard.
It does. It's just something about the production. It just takes away from some of the punchiness when I listen to it. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to give it another shot, but every time I listen to it, I'm just like, these guitars just aren't as punchy as I want them to be. You know?
I don't know.
You want to hear the black counter for this one?
Yeah.
0. Goose egg.
Really?
Ooh.
Nothing that I heard. I listened to this album twice and I did not catch. Well, I actually listened to this album probably more than twice, but I did not catch one in my 2 or 3 times listening.
Interesting.
And I could be wrong. But my standards could be too high.
They might be. Because at the end of Pissed Off, you get that guttural "oh" sound.
Oh yeah, but that's not a
That's
bleh.
not really a bleh. It's more of just a noise. And I generally tend to count any noise that they'll make.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no professor of bleh, but I do
Blehology.
think that, yeah, doctorate in blehology, 2022 graduate. It wasn't bleh enough for me.
Interesting. I think one more breakdown, like one more effect in a breakdown that really stands out to me is in More Than Nameless. It has a super interesting sound effect, and I don't even know really how to describe it, but it almost sounds like the guitar glitches out and like then starts back up.
Yeah.
It just sounds cool to me. I think this is the most coherent Fit for a King album. It's everything I could want in a Fit for a King album. I really hope they go back to this sound.
Hey, Fit for a King's your choice. You get the last word, brother.
Oh, thank you. Fit for King. Deathgrip, number 1.
Nathan, can you give us a rundown of the rankings, and then we'll preview the next band.
Actually, real quick, we'll do the rankings, of course, but then we have to determine whether or not this band could beat up 4 Year Strong.
Oh yes, I forgot all about.
And I think that's going to be an interesting discussion. All right, so my number 6 is The Path. Number 5, Descendants. Number 4, I had Dark Skies. Number 3, Creation Destruction. Number 2, I had Slave to Nothing. And my personal favorite Fit for a King album is Deathgrip. Kyle, why don't you run through your list?
At number 6, I had Descendants. Number 5, I had The Path. Number 4, I had Creation Destruction. Number 3, I had Deathgrip. Number 2, I had Slave to Nothing. And number 1, I had Fit for a King's best album, Dark Skies.
I just rolled my eyes.
For me, I had The Path at number 6. Number 5, I had Deathgrip. Number 4, Slave to Nothing. Number 3, Descendants. Number 2, Creation Destruction. And number 1, Dark Skies.
You Dark Skies boys. All right. So the question on everyone's mind: could Fit for a King take down 4 Years Strong in a fight? What do y'all think? Opening thoughts? I have some thoughts. I'd love to hear y'all's.
No, I don't think so.
Not even close. Something I learned today is that one of the singers for Fit for a King, his last name is Alan Day. That's right. He's been a Christmas tree farmer for the last 10 years, Nathan. So we talk about lumberjacks. This man, for 4 months out of the year, is hauling full-grown trees to people's trucks, selling them. So he's obviously, he's a lumberjack. He's a real-life lumberjack. And then you've got the big slab of meat right next to him, Mr. O'Connor, who, both of these guys could take down Fit for a King single-handedly. Though Fit for a King has some height, I couldn't find it anywhere. Someone please let us know how tall the guys for 4 Year Strong are, because, that kind of determines a lot, but they look like they're behemoth of men.
Interesting. So I think he said one of the vocalists for Fit for a King, but Alan is from 4 Year Strong, I think is what you were arguing.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Vocalist for 4 Year Strong is a Christmas tree farmer, Alan Day.
Gotcha. Jeff, any thoughts?
I don't know too much about the band members individually, like how much they weigh, how tall they are, their experience in the ring. But just from looking at a picture of both of them, I think 4 Year Strong has a lot more height going their way. And they also just look like bigger guys.
That's interesting.
So I'm going to go with 4 Year.
Yeah, and facial hair. A lot more facial hair.
That's definitely true. There's no argument there.
So I think with the height and what looks like the weight as well, they look like, bigger guys. I'm going to go with 4 Year Strong. Ethan, what secret knowledge do you know that could change our opinion?
Okay. So I'm not saying they could do it for sure, because 4 Year Strong has a real life lumberjack and 2 just giant boys. But here's what I think about Fit for a King. They might be a sneaky sleeper hit to take down 4 Year Strong. Easily they have the best chance of anyone we've talked about so far. But, looking at a picture of Fit for a King right now, their guitarist, Bobby, looks pretty tall. And he looks pretty big. He might have that height advantage, while Ryan and Tuck, I don't actually know how tall Tuck is. Tuck looks like he could take someone down in a fight. He looks like he's ready to go at any moment. And if you've never seen these guys live, I've seen the way Tuck throws that bass around and does like spinning on the stage. I think that'd be kind of a cool specialty move he could bust out in a fight against 4 Year Strong. Just spin around, spin kick him over and over and over again with his bass. That'd be a cool signature move. I think that would give them some advantage. And I think while Bobby's kind of getting him with the height, holding him back, I think Tuck and Ryan could just go in there and maybe go a little wild on him.
Yeah, Bobby's a string bean. And my name, Kyle McDowell. I am 5'6", so I have nothing against short people because I am one of them. But dude, Tuck isn't taller than 5'8". And the lead singer's from 4 Years Strong. When he's spin kicking, they would literally just reach out their arm and grab his head and then just stop him, like a dad. So I think there's no chance. I think 4 Years Strong.
Well, would it be like a scene where he's like trying to punch him and he's just like holding his head just out of reach of his punches? Like,
exactly what I'm envisioning.
yeah, I mean that's exactly what I see when I look at these two bands. I just think 4 Years Strong has the reach and the height, and that's a huge factor in a fight like this. Are weapons allowed?
Yeah.
Are they allowed to
No.
use guitars and stuff?
Bare knuckle.
Bare knuckle. They can't even bring their instruments to the fight.
I could bring their instruments.
That might change something.
See, I think that gives Tuck an advantage.
I agree.
That bass spin. Like that's a scary move. How do you can't focus on Bobby, tall skinny lad, while Tuck's over here doing spinning like a tornado coming at you.
And Ryan Kirby might have like a scream move that like stuns the 4 Years Strong guys.
Okay. All right. We're going into fantasy here. This is all let's keep it real, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, literally, dude. Three of the guys from Fit for a King cannot be taller than 5'8", and that is just my final argument. It's like
they have some short kings, but they also have two tall guys.
Yeah, I think
Kyle.
I think
these are Texas-built boys.
It's true.
They're also probably pacifists because it's a bunch of Christian metalcore. So what
I don't know, dude. I just listened to their discography. They seem pretty angry.
They do seem pretty angry. You're right.
I've heard Slave to Nothing.
All right. We can go around all day. Boys, what's the vote? My vote is 4 Years Strong.
Yeah, I'm with 4 Years Strong as well.
All right, then it's got to be 4 Years Strong. I'm curious if we do this like a King of the Hill. If someone beats 4 Years Strong, does the question then become, can they beat that band?
Yes, 4 Years Strong is now beating up A Day to Remember, Emarosa, and Fit for a King.
Man, they're gonna be tough to beat. They're the reigning champs, and I don't know who can take them down.
Well, it might be this next band.
There you go. Good segue.
Gentlemen, all three of us have kind of been somewhat familiar with the records, the discographies that we've gone through. I kind of want to change it up on us. I have not listened to this band much at all my entire life, but they're very prevalent in the scene. The next band we will be reviewing is The Plot and You.
Oh, good choice.
Dude, this is going to be a good one. They have a very diverse discography, so that'll be some interesting discussions.
I would also like to, I guess, propose that we record a Hail the Sun episode between now and The Plot.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, I'm down to do that.
That'll be easy. Just have to refresh my knowledge on them a little bit, but
yeah, it won't take much prep time though. So I think that would be pretty good to do, and a much smaller band, but a band whose fans love them and who I love. So
I love me some Hail the Sun. So it sounds like the next episode that audiences here will be Hail the Sun.
Yep.
But in the background, we'll be hard at work doing some studying for The Plot and You episode.
That's right.
All right. Sounds like we got a busy month or so ahead of us. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Discog Discourse. Do you agree with us? Do you agree with me or Kyle and Jeff? What's the best Fit for a King album? Let us know over at our TikTok at Discog Discourse. If you like the show, leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to. Thanks for listening. See y'all on the next one.
I love you guys.